last 18 months or so, there has been a very significant increase in the number of student visas that have been granted to international students to study in the UK. And many of us are aware of the reason why this is. It's because there's been this recent change where the UK government is now offering this 2 years of post-study work visa for people who do undergraduate and master's degree, and 3 years for people who do a PhD. You know, that's all good and fine, but that's led to this very significant increase. A very good example would be the Office of National Statistics of the UK last year, towards the end of last year, published that there was a 347% increase in the number of Nigerians that were granted the tier 4 student visa. 347. Now that is unprecedented. And what that means is that people are thinking, you know, along the lines that you're thinking as well. People are making the same kind of moves. Now, the thing, having said that, the UK is slightly different from other countries like Canada or Australia, in the sense that in the UK, if you're a student, you're being sponsored by your university. But if you finish your university study and you exhaust your post-study work period, you need an organization to be sponsoring your visa. So you need to get a job after your studies, but not just any job. You need to get a job with an organization that is willing and able to sponsor your visa. Now, being willing and able, there are two different things. An organization could be willing to sponsor your visa, but they don't have the requisite authority to sponsor. But an organization could also be able to sponsor, but they don't want to sponsor you. So you need to get a job that sponsors your visa. Now, the job market is quite competitive. You know, it's very fierce out there. What this means is, in the midst of the competition and in the midst of this disadvantage you have in that you need someone to sponsor your visa, your plan, most people have as their plan. Now, there is a category of people who genuinely, they're making this move from their home countries to come to the UK to study. And after they study, they go back to their home countries. You know, I totally respect that. And there are very many people like that. I've met people like that, and that's fine. If you're in that category, you know, this webinar may not be for you. I'm not saying you should leave, but that's not the target for this webinar. Now, that's one category. There's another category of people who they have a plan that they make this move to do their study in the UK. And after the study, they plan to get a job in the UK so that they can settle in the UK, maybe work for a number of years in the UK, maybe a few years, maybe very many years, whatever your plan is. If that is your plan, then there is something at stake here. What is at stake is that the chances are quite significant that you finish your study period here and exhaust your period of your graduate route visa. And if you don't get a job, and if your plan was to get a job, unfortunately, you will have to return. Again, there's nothing wrong with returning to your home countries, but you will agree that that wasn't your plan. So it will be a plan that you've not achieved. So that's what's at stake here. Now, the goal of this webinar will be to, first of all, what this webinar isn't, we're not a recruitment agency. We've not called you guys here to give you a job. We don't have any jobs to give. We're not being sponsored by anybody or pushed by anybody. So this is not about giving you a job, but we're hoping to share from our experiences and from the experiences of other people, the tips and strategies that you could use to increase your chances, to help you be able to get that job that sponsors your visa to continue to stay in the UK. So that's the aim of this webinar. And if that's what you hear, then you know, I encourage you to stay to the end and yeah, enjoy the rest of the webinar. I'll pass on to Martin now to take the next slide. Martin.
Thanks, Obinna. So just going straight into it, if you're here and you've gotten your admission and you're yet to start your program, it probably means you're looking at coming into the UK sometime in September. If you've already started, then that's fine as well. You've probably been a few months into your program. The first thing I wanted to touch on is how soon should you start after your program? And I cannot emphasize this enough. The best time to start is as soon as possible. As soon as you feel even somewhat settled in the UK, and if that's possible from the first week of your arrival, start looking. The main reason for that is, I know majority start their program sometime in September, and there are a lot of companies, and coincidentally is the large companies that tend to do this. They start their recruitment cycle around that period. So they start, I think they do it because they tend to target people that are in their final year of their undergrad, for example, and expect that if they can offer those people admission at that point, they'll be ready to start by the time their programs conclude the following summer. So you'll find that a lot of big companies start their recruitment cycles from about September, where you start to take some of their assessments. So starting as soon as possible, especially if you're starting in September, allows you partake in some of in some of those job offerings coming out at that time. It's not to say that there are no job opportunities that come up after that cycle, but the more you can take advantage of, the more you can start getting yourself acquainted with what assessment types or assessment styles are for different companies. If you're able to get an interview, get yourself well acquainted with the feel of some of those interviews. So yeah, how soon should you start? My advice would definitely be to start as soon as you can. You will find that a lot of universities also have resources, most times through their library, that you give information around things like companies that recruit the most in that area, or companies that have taken more of students in that university in the past couple of years. They use it to kind of guide you to know where some opportunities exist. So as soon as you get in, libraries would definitely be one place to get good information on about some of the options you have available, good companies that you can investigate, and yeah, just get it going as soon as you can. The last bullet point there talks about not depending solely on the graduate route visa, which many will know as the post-study work visa. That was introduced or reintroduced. It's been probably about 2 years now, or just under. So it was eventually cancelled at some point, and then they brought it back. And that gives you the option of working in the UK for, I think, another 2 years when your program has concluded. And that's a useful one to have. But our advice is to not depend solely on that visa route. If you're able to get yourself a skilled worker visa, if you're able to get yourself sponsored on a visa for a job before you need to use the graduate route visa, it's best to take that. If for nothing else, for the fact that if you're looking to eventually get permanent residence, you can just start counting towards your permanent residence as soon as possible, rather than waiting for the graduate route visa to expire before you start off your sponsorship. But another reason is also because the policies or their guidelines around some of these visas change frequently. So you don't want to depend on a visa that has changed before, and as you can imagine, is usually subject to change. So yeah, I'll just conclude by saying start as soon as you can once you start your program. The link at the bottom of this slide is for a blog post which we've written. It touches briefly on these recruitment cycles and just gives a few more tips around how to prepare or how to look for a job as part of your program. So again, I'll pass back to Obinna to carry us forward.
Yeah, Martin, thanks. The next thing that I would like to talk about is working during the period of your study. Now, I appreciate and understand that there is, for most people, there will be a need to work. So this is for students. If you're a student on a student visa, there will be a need to work while you're a student. For obvious reasons, you need to support yourself, maybe paying your house rent, maybe paying for your bills, paying for food and any other thing, I totally understand, and everyone understands and appreciates that. And in order to do this thing, the kind of jobs that you could get that help you support yourself in this capacity, you tend to take up jobs that are readily available around you. Okay. Now, no matter the job you take up that is legit and that helps you to support yourself, there is every dignity, there is every sense of dignity in every type of work, and that's fine. But having said that, you need to remember that maybe before you made the move to come to the UK to study, you had a plan. If your plan was that I want to become a civil engineer, I want to become a software developer, I want to become a medical doctor, whatever that ambition, whatever that plan was, you had it, right? But now you're also having to do some jobs that's the skills that you're getting at your part-time job, or the kind of experience you're developing on your part-time role, or the kind of interactions you're having with people there in that part-time role. I mean, you have to ask yourself a question and answer it sincerely. If the kind of experience you're getting and the kind of skill set you're developing is not in line with that initial plan you had, if it's a skill that you can't put on your CV, but at the same time you also need to do that job to be able to sustain yourself, then you need to pause and maybe rethink your strategy. Now, there's nothing wrong with it. The problem with it is most people will tend to fill up every single hour they have as spare. They tend to fill it up with going to work. And now again, if you come into the country and you take up a part-time job, and no matter what the job is, and you start liking, really, really loving the job, and then you see a future in the job, and you think that I can actually be in this job for the long term, then you don't have to change anything. You just carry on there, just keep getting the experience, keep developing your skills within that area, and you'll be fine. But I'm talking of, if you do know that the skill you're getting or the experience you're getting in that job, it's not the type you can put on your CV when you want to go for that job you initially planned for, then you just need to you need to strike a balance. Now, the recommendation would be, try not to fill up all your spare time. So let's say you're studying and then you have 20 hours to work, and that 20 hours you want to fill everything up. In fact, you fill it up, you hardly have any time for yourself, let alone do any other thing. You just need to pause. There's a little bit of delay gratification, because you are putting all you have into the now, and you're sacrificing the future, because the kind of skills that you need to put on your CV to get the job that you want to get, you're not getting it there. So what you can do is try to strike a balance. I mean, that's if you can afford it. I understand many people can't afford it. People need to absolutely work all those hours. But if you can squeeze it, if you can afford it, maybe you can cut down. Don't spend all that hour doing something that it's not sitting very well in your long-term goal, in your long-term plan. Delay that gratification, plan, sacrifice something now so that you can gain something in the future. Maybe you need to learn a skill, you further, or maybe I need to get this certification in this field, or I need to maybe learn a programming language if that's the environment you're in, or whatever it is that you can do to add to your skill that helps you move you forward. So cut down on how much you put into those other kind of jobs, and then invest a bit more time in learning those skills. Another thing to mention here is, while you're trying to develop skills, it's possible you don't have I keep talking about having a plan, but for many of us, sometimes we actually don't have a crystal clear plan, right? And that's fine. But you can start looking around. A good place to look would be, look at the shortage occupation list. There's this thing called shortage occupation list. You might be aware of it or not, but look at the kind of skills that that people are getting recruited for, that can sponsor a visa afterwards. Or even if you don't look at that, you know your sphere, you know your area, your sector, what kind of skill could you be developing on the side by yourself? Maybe you can give it 5 hours a week or 2 hours a week, 1 hour a week, 30 minutes a week, whatever you can manage, but try to strike a balance between doing something that is only for the now and not really beneficial in the future versus doing something that will benefit you in the future. Now, that also leads me to talk about volunteering. So, volunteering, sometimes they come as unpaid because, you're just going as a volunteer. You may not get a job, but again, you know your situation. You can weigh it. If you see a volunteering position or opportunity where you're not going to be paid, but the kind of interaction and the kind of skills you develop on that role, propels you, it's in line with your future plans, then it's something to consider. And you can take it as a sacrifice, which most likely will pay off. And another thing is going for internship. So if you're coming from a country like Nigeria, it's very easy to look at internship as something that, it's for second year undergraduate students, but you're thinking, oh, you probably have 3 years working experience in Nigeria or whichever country you come from before you came into the UK to study. So there's a tendency to look down on internship positions, but I like to encourage you to change that mindset, because internships are really, really strong and they're really powerful. I know from experience, and in the organization I work, internship is very big. If you do an internship in an organization, and during your internship, they see your work ethic, they see that you can do the job. You've already had an interview and you've passed the interview. Most companies, they don't want to bother trying to do all this recruitment cycle or recruitment process any longer. So internships are a great way to actually get closer. It might not, in fact, the internship you do in a company could get you into that company. That's one. But it's probably the case that company isn't even able to sponsor your visa, okay? But the skill, the experience and skill you've gotten there could help you get another job in another company that's able to sponsor your visa. But the main thing is that while you are studying or while you are on your post-study work visa, that you are gaining the skill sets, you are gaining the requisite experience that takes you closer to that job that you would like to get. So that's very key. Martin, if you move to the next slide. Then the next thing to talk about now is job applications. I have many people ask me this question. Hey, Obina, how many job applications do you think I should be sending? And my response is usually, like, if you're not getting a rejection email at least on the average once every week, then you're not applying enough. So you should be sending out those applications, sending very many of them out. It's a game of numbers. You don't know which of the job application is going to get you that job. So you need to send out those applications. You need to get very comfortable with receiving those rejection emails. Like, you need to be so comfortable with it. While I was looking for a job, I applied. Now, again, there are people who see a job advert and they make that first application, they get that interview and they get the job. I totally understand that. But these people they're in the minority. Those are the exceptions. For majority of people, it's a numbers game. You have to just keep applying and keep throwing out those CVs. Now, get comfortable with rejections, like I was saying. I remember there was a rejection email I got. I submitted a job application by, I think I submitted it around 10:30 p.m. I stayed back in the office during my PhD. Just working on this application, these very long applications that have like 10 pages. And I spent all that 2 hours or so putting this application together, sent it around past 10 p.m. and went home, went to bed, woke up the next morning, put on my phone, and I got a rejection. I got a rejection from this job. So, and then you just tell yourself next, you move on to the next one. So get comfortable with getting rejections. Then another thing I would like to mention is, you have the popular job portals, you have your LinkedIn, you have your Total Jobs, you have your Indeed. Those are all good and fine because they're able to um, collate a pool of all the jobs that are available. That's fine. But there's something I would like you to do in addition to using these popular websites. Just go on Google and seek out the kind of companies that you like to work for. Or even if you know the company already, just go to their job websites, or sorry, their career page, find out if they have vacancies, because some of those vacancies don't make it to those other job portals. Sometimes they don't even have any vacancy, but it's quite common for some organizations to write something like, if you think that you're qualified and you have this, you have the skills to work for us, send us your CV. And I tell you, for me, that was my case. I'm not saying I got many interviews using LinkedIn, using Indeed, but unfortunately, I didn't get those jobs. That's life. But the job I finally got, the company I'm working for, I never heard about the name of this company anywhere. One day I was searching for a job. I think I typed in something like list of power systems consulting companies in the UK. And then a list came out. And then I started clicking. So you click on one of them, it takes you to your website, check their careers page. If you don't find anything, you move on. So that's what I did. And I went to the careers page of my current organization. There wasn't really even a job advert, but I saw that same thing. If you think you have loosely this kind of skills, send us a CV. I sent my CV and I got a call back from them a week later, and the rest they say is history. So I'm also just encouraging you. Many people have got jobs through this method. Use the job portals, but add your personal research to it. Seek out these companies by yourself. Then the next point is to be dedicated to doing the job applications. If people say that it's a full-time job to look for a job, and that's true. Make out time. If it's an hour every day, if it's 30 minutes every day, if it's an hour every 2 days, you know your schedule, but you have to take it very seriously, because again, it's a numbers game. You need to work at it and just keep pushing out those CVs. And then while you're pushing out your CVs, it's also very important. I mean, don't be that very lazy applicant who sends exactly the same CV for every single role. You could spend 5-10 minutes. You already have a template. You already have a good working document as a CV. Just spend 5-10 minutes trying to modify some sections of it just to match with the job description you've just seen. Don't be that lazy, and just make it easy for the person who is to recruit you to actually send you that invitation. Okay, and then lastly on this point will be, try to get as many interviews as possible. Don't be too picky now. Sometimes if you've looked for jobs, sometimes you even apply for a job you can't even remember, and then you get a job interview invitation. You're thinking, when did I apply to this job? Maybe you now look at the specifics of that job and you realize, oh, I don't think I really like this job. But if you get an interview for any reason, I will advise you go. The reason is because the more interviews you do, the more you get comfortable around, sitting in interview situations, the more you get comfortable with, interacting with the interviewers. It builds your confidence, builds your level of comfort, and you get these many interviews, and they prepare you for that interview that gets you the job. Now, the problem is you don't know which interview is going to be that one. So you just have to put all your best in every interview you do, but do very many of them, get more comfortable, and that massively increases your chances. Martin, if you go to the next slide, then another thing that's very important to mention here is to reach out and to network. Now, I know these are all buzzwords. I understand, but I cannot overemphasize on these things, because it's very easy. Let's say if you're doing a study, if you're doing a master's or you're doing a PhD, it's very easy to have your just face down focused on doing what you're doing. You're really studying very hard because you have this very difficult and intense master's degree in engineering or master's in whatever you're doing. And then any spare time you have, you're also going to do your part-time job to make ends meet. You know, there's easily that tendency, but you might be missing out on key information. If you hear about conferences, maybe within your space or for your department or in a different town, just try and go make the effort. You hear about webinars like this one, or it might even be technical, like professional webinars in your space. Make out time to attend these things. You hear about social gatherings. Hey, someone is having a birthday, it's inviting people to come over in the weekend. Go for those. Go to these events. Hear people's experiences, and also share your experiences, and just get the information. Information is king. You could be in a city and there is a job. In fact, there could be a job on your streets that you do not know about, and someone can come from thousands of miles and the person comes and gets that job just because you do not know. So make out time to reach out, make out time to, and then another one is career fairs. So if you're in a university, if you're studying, every now and then university organizes these career fairs where they have recruiters or employers, potential employers, come and talk about what they do. Don't miss those events. Make sure you go for every kind of event, network and meet people. Now, on the point of internal recruitment, this is just to demonstrate how important it is to network with people. Now, very many organizations in the UK, they have these referral programs where if their staff can recommend someone to them as a potential employee, and that person eventually gets recruited, the staff is rewarded. It's probably given some cash incentive to do that. And why are companies doing that? It's because they will rather not go through that stress of course, you're going to go through the company's recruitment process. If you fail, you fail out, right? But at least you've recommended someone and the person goes through the stages and the person gets the job. Companies incentivize their staff to get them people. Now, what this means is many people are working in organizations where the organization is in need of people. They're looking for people to come and join them, but the staff in that company, they just don't know who to recommend. Where do you meet this kind of people? It's when you go for like webinars or you attend conferences, speak up, meet people, say, hi, I'm doing my master's in this, I'm doing a PhD in this, I have this skill, I do this, so what do you do? And you can strike up a conversation. Somebody might say, is that nepotism? Well, I don't think it's nepotism, but I wouldn't go into the moral part of it, but it works and people get jobs that way. It doesn't mean you're going to get the job on a platter. You're still going to go through the recruitment process, but someone has pushed forward your CV, and that's very crucial. Then the last thing I'm going to mention here is mentorship. Now, I put mentorship in quotes because it's this word is thrown about a lot, and sometimes it can also feel very heavy. There has to be this mentor and there has to be this mentee, and they have to have this relationship. They have to meet every month, every 2 months. No, just keeping it simple. Get somebody or be in contact with people who are ahead of you in your field. If you're a civil engineer, you're a power systems engineer, whatever you are. Sorry, I say engineer a lot because I'm an engineer, but whatever field you're in, just know that person who is maybe 3 years ahead or 5 years or 10 years in the field. Ask them very simple, straightforward questions. Don't make it too big. Oh, I want you to be my mentor, and then you have to know. Just ask them what kind of skills are in demand in this sector. What kind of software do I need to learn? What kind of tools do I need to know? You can ask them where is the industry going? Where do you see the industry moving? They give you the information. You'll be surprised at how much information people who are already working are willing to give out. They tell you, that software is getting obsolete. less companies are using that software now. This is the new one now. This is where the market is going. Those pieces of information, then now you know, even for your PhD, you're doing a research, you don't know what skills you can be picking up. You know, you go to conferences, listen to the kind of things that the industry is discussing about, the direction the industry is moving. You know, you could start, you know, modifying things or help it to shape your research, you know, and then this again would not give you the job, but increase the chance that, you know, you get that job. Martin.
Thanks for that, Obinna. So, yeah, just following on from what Obinna has mentioned, by the time you start your program or you read a lot of articles around just the workforce in a place like the UK, you're likely to find a bit of an irony very quickly. So you will hear, first of all, you will know of or have heard of a lot of people that are looking for jobs. But at the same time, one common theme you would see a lot of articles around is skills shortage, or companies saying things like they're struggling to fill certain roles. So the question now becomes, how are there a lot of people looking for jobs, but at the same time, companies are also saying they're struggling to fill certain roles? And many times it's, the challenge is for these companies is finding the employees that have the skills that they need to fit certain roles. So it goes back a bit to what Obinna mentioned at the start. Many would see it as a need to do some work, and no matter what the work is when you start. But it's crucial to identify the sector you're in, identify the requirements of getting the type of job you want or the type of job you need in that sector, and then identify the skills you need to make it. That by itself can sound a bit daunting because you have your masters to cope with. Is the expectation for you to also become an expert in this software or in this level of programming? What you will find is that a lot of these companies just need you to prove a certain level of competence, because they appreciate that when they're recruiting people, they're not always recruiting experts. They're recruiting people that have shown a willingness to learn and have shown an ability to learn. So you start off with a certain level of competence in that field, and they know at some point while you work for them, they'll put you on trainings to grow your skill. They'll put you on trainings to grow other skills. But it's just taking that initial step to start to pick the skills that you need to just get the door open for you in the sector and in the jobs that you're looking for. Then experience from certificates. I think that's something you would find a lot of when you come to the UK. I personally have worked for, so after my master's, the company I joined, one of the companies I joined as a junior engineer, and most of the senior engineers I was working alongside, so people that I would normally report to or escalate issues to when there were issues, hardly any of them had a university degree. For many of them, it was complete secondary school and then start taking apprenticeships, or they did their A-levels, took one or two courses like computer networking, did that for a year or two as A-levels, didn't bother with university, and they've worked their way in the corporate sector to get to that point. So it's for you to understand there's value in you completing your master's, your PhD, more so in certain sectors. Obviously, if you're in healthcare, if you're in finance, you might find the certificate and what you have on that certificate is crucial for you to make headway in that sector. But a lot of other fields, the experience you have or the skills you have alongside your certificate are more crucial than just having a certificate that says you've done a master's in this program at this university and you finished with a distinction. I've also worked for a company where the owner did not go to university. So with my master's degree, I was being paid by someone that did not have a university degree. Now, for many, their way into the UK is to come in to school. So you will end up having a university degree, and that's absolutely fine because there's no harm in having it. If you can put a bit of experience on top of that certificate, then that's where there's a lot of value. So I would definitely say again, tying back to what Obina mentioned at the start, where you have opportunities for internships or volunteering, take those where they're available and just use them as the extra for your certificate, because those very much go a long way. Then there are things around cultural fits as well. I know that might sound it might sound like nothing that anyone should necessarily bother with, but we're all humans, and when we move to a new environment, the tendency is to stick around those that are like us or that have come from where we've come from. It's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But it makes sense to try to integrate into the culture that you've moved to. Solely having a network of people that are all looking for jobs doesn't necessarily benefit either of you. So it makes sense for you to take time, integrate, get to know people in the country, get to know the locals, get to know some of their own social norms, get to know some of the things that are useful to know or useful to have if you're getting a job. And you'll be surprised the kind of things you learn. You know, basic things like handshakes, I would say, as an example. Depending on where you're coming from, that's almost the standard way to greet anyone. But you might find, you move to the UK and it's not necessarily that it's a problem, but more often than not, people are fine with you just, saying hello or just, a quick wave, and you carry on. It might not sound like it's of much importance, but just being comfortable with certain forms of communication and mannerisms with the place you're going to, it goes a long way. And then there's the need to be able to communicate in the way they communicate as well. The best way to go about that is to communicate with them, engage with them, get to know how they speak, get to know, even things like their sense of humor. Just get to fully understand how they go about their things, so that when you're in an environment where you need to speak, or you're in an interview, you're just very comfortable with the way they do things because you've taken that time to integrate. Then there's visa sponsorship, and I would imagine most on the call know this, and for years this has been what I would say the biggest barrier or the most challenging requirement. It's a fact, and it's unlikely that that's going anywhere anytime soon. So just accept it and work towards it. There's a list of companies that sponsor. So I don't want to go from top to bottom about the skilled worker visa and the nitty-gritty of what you need. We've written a post, and the link is at the bottom of this slide, where we touched on the requirements of that. But essentially, after a university program, and now that there's the post-study work visa or graduate route visa, to continue to remain in the UK working, you need to be sponsored for the job you're going to be working for. You need to be sponsored. Not every company can sponsor. So there's a list of companies that are able to sponsor. So the best place to start, if that's what you're looking for, is, get on that list, look for the ones in your sector, and just start going through them individually. Commit as much time as you can to finding what opportunities are available to some of those companies. Like Obinna said, some of those portals are useful, but they're not always the be all and end all. Some of them post on some of those portals, but they don't post every job on some of those platforms. So go to some of these websites directly and try and submit your CVs directly to them, or even just get in touch with their HR team and ask them what our roles are available, what are the requirements of some of those roles, if they have any internships available, and things like that. Support services, most universities have pretty much dedicated departments in the library that are there to help students, not just international students, with getting jobs. They might not be able to get you the job themselves, but they set it up so that you're able to get support with things like your CV, with things like your LinkedIn profile. They are there for you to use at no extra cost. And they don't do it casually because it works in their favor as well. They want to be able to say, for this year, 2022, 2023, we had this number of graduates, and within a year of graduating, this number of them had gotten jobs. the more they can put those types of stats around their names, the more attractive the university looks. So more people are interested in coming to that university. So don't go about it thinking you're asking much from them. They have plenty to benefit from doing that as well, and it's something they want to do. You will also find that some of them have departments, or within that same department, people that can give you some tips around immigration if you're not very clear about what your immigration requirements are for certain roles. So take advantage of those. Obinad talked about taking internships and part-time roles where you can get these with companies that sponsor even better, because like he's mentioned, the recruitment process for many of them is expensive. They go through agencies, and a lot of times those agencies cost them a lot of money. So where they can get someone to join as an intern and the person does well, it's natural for them to let that person stay on and kind of graduate to a full-time role. So go through your list of sponsoring companies. If they have jobs, if they have internships that appeal to you, try and see how you can pursue those. Another heavy recommendation is to negotiate your sponsorship from the start, even if you're going to be using your post-study work visa at the start. This is crucial, one, because some of these policies change, and two, even within the organization, their own policies might change. So it's not that you can hold it to their heads and say, I'm not starting this role until I get sponsorship. That might not be an option, obviously, but very often you will be able to, make it clear to them that you need sponsorship. I mean, hopefully you applied for the job in the first place knowing that they're able to sponsor. So you just make it clear to them, or you ask when are you going to be able to apply with the sponsorship that they provide. It might be that they want to delay it for 3 months, 6 months, and just use that as a probation period for you. And that's absolutely fine. But again, it's crucial that if you can get on the skilled worker visa as soon as possible, you go ahead for that. If for nothing else, for the fact that you can just start counting straight away towards your permanent residence, rather than waiting to do 2 years of post-study work visa and then starting at that point to look for a sponsorship, knowing fully well that a lot of guidelines around these visas change. In terms of some of the biggest sponsors, I imagine many on the call already know the NHS is one of the very big sponsors here in the UK. And the benefit of that one is obviously that for certain roles, you can even get jobs right from when you're in Nigeria. You don't have to come in, do a master's first, and then start looking from there. So that's a huge benefit. But there are a few others that some might not know. Universities, they're also very heavy sponsors. And that's very popular with those doing PhDs. So for anyone doing a PhD or looking to do a PhD, that's an option that is worth noting about. The last one I've put down there, secondary schools. I think that's one that a lot of people don't necessarily know about. Now, I've put in brackets, PGC is required, which is the postgraduate certificate in education. You need it to qualify as a teacher here. So what would happen would be if you came in to do a master's, for you to be able to teach, following your master's, you would need to do a PGCE. It's normally around 9 to 10 months. But there are a few things to be aware of with the PGCE. And just before I touch on the requirements, it's useful to know the types of subjects that are easier to get sponsorship for, should you be looking to teach in a secondary school. Some of the popular ones, or two popular ones, for example, are maths and physics. So if you've done, or if you have an undergraduate degree in maths, for example, or you have an undergraduate degree in physics, and you're looking to do a master's in maths or physics, then you put yourself in a good position. Now, one thing to be aware of, though, is applying for a PGCE, you don't qualify for a place in PGCE automatically like you do with some masters, where you just upload your documents, your certificate, your transcript, and then you get assessed and you start. To get accepted into a PGCE program, they often interview you or test you, and some of the test is around your experience in a teaching environment here in the UK. They typically won't consider your experience or any teaching experience you have elsewhere. So the way to get yourself in a good position for that is, while you're doing a master's, again, say you're doing your master's in maths, you will find that there are a lot of teaching assistant jobs that are open. You can get a ton of them through some of these agencies. So while you're doing your master's, you can apply to be a teaching assistant, which means it just gives you a couple of days a week, that option to be able to engage with the teaching environment, just get a feel of the teaching environment here in the UK. And having that experience definitely serves you well when you're looking to apply for a PGCE, because that's one key thing that they look for. The link I've added to the bottom there is another post that we've written around the skilled worker visa. We touched on a lot of the requirements. So yeah, that will be another useful resource for you to look at if you're still not clear on what the requirements are for a skilled worker visa. I'll pass that on to Obi now.
Thanks, Martin. And just rounding up now, something I thought we will touch on again is mindset. Now, this is not necessarily how do you apply to this job, how do you which visa should you go for, but I believe that the mindset is very, very crucial. The reason is because, you know, just while you're going about your studies, while you're going about looking for jobs, you need to mind your company and manage the naysayers. What I mean is, you know, there are people who have the same goals and ambitions as you do. There are people who have come in here and their plan is they also would like to get a job when they finish their study. But just for some reasons, there's some people that just drive the energy downwards. There's some people that are just like naysayers. They don't believe, like they even talk you out. They say, oh, you know, nah, it's just a waste of time. I know Mr. A, I know Mr. B, I know Mr. C. They've come to the UK, they studied, they stayed for a year extra, they couldn't get a job, they went back. Now, you know, it's nobody's fault, or there's nothing wrong if somebody wasn't able to get a job. But at least if it's something that you want to do, you could at least just develop a positive mindset towards it, you know, believe what's possible. If everyone around your circle is saying that this thing is impossible to get a job that's going to sponsor your visa, then you should, I don't want to say you should leave that circle, but you should expand your circle. You should find also people who are very positive, you know, very, very hopeful about the fact that you can actually finish your study in this country and get a good job that sponsors your visa. Those are the kind of people you want to also, you know, hang around. If someone mentions 3 people or 4 people who have been to the UK and they finished their study and they went back and they didn't get a job, you know, you need to also have 3 or 4 equal examples to match that and say, oh, but I know Martin, I know Obina, I know Mr. A, I know Mr. B. They pass through the same path that I'm passing through, and they achieve their goals. So just mind the company you keep, mind people who talk you out of your plans or your goals or your dreams, and then help other people. Now, you know, it's very easy while we are chasing our individual goals. It's very easy to be very focused on your goal and be very focused on achieving what you want to achieve. But I think it's actually, you know, looking at the bigger picture, it's a far better strategy to be willing to help other people as well who are on similar journeys. They might not be exactly on your journey, but, you know, I'm looking for a job as a software engineer. Someone is looking for a job, maybe as a software engineer, or maybe as something else. You know, while on the journey, share information. Oh, there is this visa you could apply to, but before you need to make this application within this time frame. You know, those kind of information that's vital, that can help the next person, you know, try and help the person beside you. And when you share information with people, people also tend to want to share information with you when they see the heart, the genuineness with which you're trying to help them. You know, they also tend to want to help you. So just keep your eyes. I mean, I will advise you as a final note, you know, don't lose focus. Keep your eye on the dream. You know, be hopeful, be positive, mind your company, and it's actually it's a good country to be in. The potentials are enormous, right? There's this barrier of visa, like Martin has just said, But if you're able to break that barrier, which many people have done, there are so many success stories. If you're able to break that barrier or even go through a different routes, then I promise you the potentials within the country. I'm not selling the country, but the potentials are definitely there. So I'm saying it's a journey that's worth embarking on. And if you're going to embark on the journey, you might as well give it your best. You might as well cover your ears to people who are saying it's not possible. Give it your best. What's the worst that can happen? You try your best, it doesn't work out. Then you can always beat your chest and say, I tried my best once upon a time. Okay. So keep that positive mindset going, and hopefully you're going to achieve your dreams. Martin.
Cool. Thank you very much, Obinna. So that's what we have for now. We would like to take, we'll have a look at some of the questions that have been asked and see which ones we're able to answer. We might still be able to take a few questions from people directly as well, if they still have. Actually, Obinna, I don't know if you, since I still have my screen shared, are you able to just look through a couple of the questions and see which ones we can?
Yeah, so guys, maybe we may be able to give one or two people who have questions the microphone to speak. But yeah, just looking through the questions here, I'll look at the first one. My straightaway question is the route for special education needs towards sponsorship. So guys, just to make it clear, we are by no means any immigration advisors. We are not even a recruitment company. We're sharing the things that we've done and other people have done that help them to get a job that sponsors their visa to stay here, right? So it's some of the questions you might ask, like special education needs teachers. I wouldn't hesitate to say I have absolutely no idea what that category of visa is. Now, it doesn't mean there is no answer to your question, but I probably am not the right person to answer that. But if you want, if you like it, we can always make inquiries. We can do some research. We can ask people around, say, what about this thing? If we get some answers, we'll let you know. If you like that, you could. There, we've posted, if you scroll up through the charts, we've posted there's a link there through which you could just kindly forward the same question there. Just drop your email. It's a very simple form. Drop your email and your name. If we get the answers to the question, and then we can always send it to you and maybe send it to other people who are involved, or other people who might be interested in hearing the answer to the question. But I mean, Martin, do you have any answer to this question about special education needs?
Can you take the question in full again, please?
So the question is, say, I'll read it now. My straightaway question is the route for special education needs teachers towards sponsorship. So I guess the person is asking, what's the route for sponsorship for special education needs teachers?
Okay. I don't have any specific information on that one, no. But my guess is it won't be much different from the route that teachers would normally have to go through. But one thing to highlight, though, about the route of sponsorship through teachers, for example, is, and the same applies with certain other sectors like NHS, even universities, the requirements are not always the exact same thing as with a couple of other sectors. So you find that things like salary requirements are often lower, just to make sure that they can fill those roles because they have a shortage of staff for those roles. So short answer to the question is, I don't know of anything specific around special education needs. But like Obinna said, we'll look and we'll probably be able to get back to you if you just add that information in our contact form.
Yeah, whoever asked the question, so sorry about that, but again, we just have to be honest with exactly what we're offering. There is, but if you want, I mean, like I said, just scroll up, you can see that contact form, just fill that in and we can check that and get back to you, definitely. There is another question here, Martin. It says, how do I get into a professional job when I have no relevant UK experience? I have acquired the requisite qualifications, but the UK experiences I have are not professional. So I don't know if, did you get that question, Martin?
Sorry, please take it again.
So the person is asking, how do I get into a professional job when I have no relevant UK experience? I have acquired the requisite qualifications, but the UK experiences I have are not professional.
Okay. Yeah, that one is, I mean, without knowing certain specifics, I think it's hard to answer. So I'll just kind of give what I think is as an answer that will cover at least the scenario I have in my head. I think one possible scenario for that would be kind of similar to what we touched on during the call, one that might have spent some time working in jobs that are good for getting by. Admittedly, some people have to find a way to make an income because you need to pay your rent, you need to pay your bills. So they've come in and they've taken certain jobs, and that's understandable. Like we've said, the risk with some of those types of jobs is you come in and you commit time to work in those jobs, and the time flies by. Before long, you realize you've been there for a year or two, and you've not looked elsewhere. Now, part of the problem is the longer you stay in a job, the more likely it is that if you were ever going to change jobs, you will be looking for something like the one that you are already in because of how long you spent. It becomes the only experience you can refer to. And so it makes sense that if you're looking for something else, you look in that field. So that's another downside of coming in and almost just committing yourself solely to getting a job, even if the job is only to get you by. My suggestion for a scenario like that would be, again, find a sector that has a lot of opportunities for people that are switching careers. And I'll use mine as an example. So I work in IT, and IT is a field where there's a lot of demand, and I think it will remain the case for a long time. Now, it takes a while to get going, especially if you have no history or no education with that background. But there are a lot of courses that you can use to get started, and your start might look something like just being on a help desk. So I'll just use some certifications as examples. There's a certification called A+ or Network Plus, for example. So say you've been in banking, or your education qualification has been in banking or finance, and now you're looking to switch to IT. You can just start with certifications like A+, Network Plus. There are books. Udemy is a useful resource to get short courses that bring you up to speed on the fundamentals of some of these. And then just accept that your first job might be at the very first level. So your first role might be something like a help desk person, where you're just taking calls and people are asking you to reset their passwords or telling you something is not working, and you have a list of things that you're supposed to recommend to them. Turn it off, turn it back on, or you pass it on to somebody else. But just being in that environment where you're taking calls, you start to see how the other people that are higher up in their roles work. You start to learn from there, and you can easily change, you can easily move within IT. So that's another benefit. You might be able to stay in a help desk role for about a year. And by moving once or twice, you find that within 2-3 years, you're already in an engineer role. So that will be my recommendation, or that would be an example of what I would recommend. Without knowing the specifics, unfortunately, I probably can't give a specific answer as well, but I hope you found that helpful.
This one I can answer straight away. Lois FA is asking, I'm currently a first year PhD student. When do you advise that I start to apply for a job? Is it okay I start a year before graduation, or I start now? Okay, so Lois, I can answer this because I have been, through that journey that you're currently on now. Last time I checked, again, you just need to verify. I don't think it's changed, but last time I checked, legally, officially, you can start working on a full-time job in the UK after the first 12 months of your PhD. Now, if you start a PhD and you do your study for 12 months, you could legitimately get a full-time job and start working, and maybe your PhD will now be kind of part-time. Having said that, the challenge with that is you find that even though you're allowed to do that, it's not the easiest things to manage. Now you're going to have a conflict. The potential employer is going to, most employers will not be very comfortable with that because they know that you're supposed to be giving all your time to your PhD. So they don't know how much commitment in terms of time you're going to bring to the job, given that you already have your PhD that you also need to work seriously on and finish. That's on one hand. Then on the other hand, your PhD supervisor also needs you to graduate. So your supervisor, you will find most of them, I don't know your supervisor, but most supervisors you will find would also think that it's not in your best interest or in their own best interest as a supervisor that you go for this full-time job when you're just 1 year in. In fact, if 1 year into your PhD, you're still doing literature review, you're still trying to understand what on earth you're doing as a PhD student. So that will be the challenge, but legally, officially, yes, you can start. What's my recommendation? For the reasons I've mentioned, I would say, again, people's situations and conditions could be different. But if you just like the average PhD student, I would say, give it, maybe give it another. Some people finish their PhD in 3 years. So if you do the first 2 years, my recommendation, if you do the first 2 years, then you can start applying. If it's a 4-year PhD, you do your first 2 years, you can start applying. It's possible you're not even ready to start yet, but you start applying, just start, testing the waters, sending out your CV, seeing the kind of feedback you get, even getting interviews, and them telling you. I think I was in a number of interviews during my PhD where they politely told me, that they would have preferred I finish my PhD. But I was there in the interview. I went through all the processes. I've gained that experience for myself. So my personal recommendation would be, finish your first 2 years, so that you're not under that too much pressure that you've started a full-time job after your first year, because you really, really want to finish your PhD. So I would say start looking from after your 2 years, lightly, then you can intensify that on the final year of your PhD. And if you could get a job during your final year of a PhD that they're willing to wait for you for a year. My current employer, the way things are going now, they give people job offers who say they want to start 8 months later, 1 year later, and they say, okay, we're giving you the job whenever you're ready, show up. So yeah. So my recommendation would be give it 2 years so that you at least you have your feet solid on your PhD, and then you can move from there. So Lois, I hope you found that useful. Martin, do you want me to look at another question?
Yeah, please carry on. Maybe we can probably look at one more, and then if the raised hand, if the person with the raised hand is still there,
and we're also mindful of time, guys. I mean, we don't want to infinitely extend the webinar. The target was for an hour and a few minutes. So Suleiman Ali, good evening, sir. I am a PhD holder in electrical engineering from University of Technology, Malaysia, with major in telecommunications, and I've never been to UK. Whenever I'm filling a recruitment form, I encounter the question about work permits. What is the process of getting a work permit?
Do you want me to take this one?
Yeah, Martin, go for it.
It's, again, from the question, I assume you are still in Malaysia and now looking to get a job in the UK directly without having to come here, for a university program. Again, our core reason for this call was to touch on people that were going to be looking for jobs, say through university or following graduation, but it doesn't stop us from touching briefly on topics like these. The short answer is, to the extent that I know, I don't think it will be any different. It still just requires you to get a skilled worker visa. And in this case, you have to get it while you're outside the country. Now, what that means is, and it's not impossible, as a matter of fact, I know someone that has gotten the exact same thing before, and the person was based in Lebanon, got a job for a company in the UK because they sponsored the visa. But it has to be your experience and the skills you're offering. It has to be such that they're really struggling to get someone already in the UK with that qualification. So you are the one that will be able to assess your level of skill at the moment and your level of experience. Again, I know there are companies that will do it. You just need to look at that list of sponsoring companies. And if you find those in your sector that you feel are companies you want to work with, then have a go. But if I'm honest, it would fundamentally just depend on you being able to offer something that they are struggling to get in the local market, because they almost have to prove that they want to bring someone in from another country because they've struggled to fill that role with anybody local. So I hope you found that helpful.
Yeah, no, that's a very good one, Martin. And just to add to you, Suleiman, just because you said you have a PhD, like Martin mentioned during the presentation, the universities and NHS, they seem like two of the biggest visa sponsors. Now, this is a suggestion. It might not be your cup of tea, but if you have a PhD, maybe you could also be looking at, research assistant, postdoctoral positions. I've seen, like, as far as the university is concerned, people move a lot because the university has a lot of power to sponsor visas. Now, if it's your cup of tea, maybe a suggestion would be look at, in addition to what Martin has said, look at the academic rules. PhD, you have a PhD from a university. If you get a professor or a doctor, an academic who likes to work with you, the visa is automatic. Like if they say, I want to get this person, they put it to the university, they're bringing you. Then if they bring you, and then you might even just like the university job if that's a cup of tea, or if not, then again you're closer to you're inching closer to where you want to be, and then maybe from there you can now take the next step, if you get what I mean. So that might be something to also explore, Suleiman. Again, I hope that's useful.
Very great. Okay, so I find myself in a company where we have variety of job responsibility, where we have to go through the IT, networking, and we have a lot to do with services, okay? So we do also power and system repairs or maintenance, sorry, okay? Now, one wants to relocate to the UK. Are there specific certificates that one can look at or one can actually go, and how do we go about it? Because unfortunately, we find ourselves doing these kind of jobs, but the skills, the experience are there, but the certificates are not there. So how does one go about getting a certificate that is required to have a remote job in the UK, or build up a certificate before visiting the UK? I think that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. So just taking note of the last part of your question. So are you looking specifically for a remote job, one that would allow you, say, continue to live in Nigeria, but be working for an employer here in the UK?
Yes, before visiting the UK, before getting a sponsorship to move to the UK. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for the question.
Yeah.
No, I'd say that's correct. I do want to touch on something that is almost slightly entirely separate from the job itself. And I think it's one thing that people don't see as obvious. But I think when people get to understand it, they start to understand why sometimes it's difficult for companies in a place like the UK to employ people full time in a place or while the person is based in a place like Nigeria. But to just touch on some of the things or to just go over some of the things you mentioned as well, I think he has some experience already, maybe a great deal of experience. Maybe he doesn't quite have some of those certifications. Now, part of the challenge becomes if you're already abroad and they have a few options that are local here, why put themselves through the trying to get, applying for a certificate of sponsorship? As a matter of fact, I'll need to double check whether or not they've pushed this policy, but for a while, the UK, in a way to try to kind of, I wouldn't say coerce, but almost pressing employers towards looking for talent locally, they set it such that for companies, and it varies depending on the size of the company, if you're sponsoring someone, it will cost you, if you're sponsoring someone that is not a local, it will cost you a certain amount of money for each person that you're sponsoring. So if a company can avoid incurring that additional cost, especially if it's for skills that they can find locally, you can imagine that it's unlikely that they're going to do that. So again, because I don't know the exact details of the amount of experience you have, it's not to say you will not be able to find those jobs, but from the company's perspective, what's the benefit for them in going through those additional procedures, trying to go through the Home Office to bring someone in, if they might be able to get someone here who is local? But the second thing, and this is another part that is not immediately obvious to many people, is if you're fully employed by a company here, for example, there are certain things that they do, or there are certain aspects of your contract that are not just about the job itself. They would typically need to contribute into your pensions. They would normally need to contribute towards national insurance for you. They would normally need to deduct taxes for you. Now, some of those things get complicated if you're not resident in the UK, because they are mapped against things like your national insurance number. But you should be here to have a national insurance number. So while companies, or while people do get jobs, a lot from abroad, you'll find in a lot of cases that they are, like Obinna said, freelance or contract type jobs, because for things that are just kind of spec'd for a certain amount of time only, they don't necessarily have some of those requirements like paying into your pension or assigning you a certain number of days as holiday or deducting any tax from you. So they just accept they're almost running that as a project being executed by someone abroad. But for them to employ you full time, there are certain commitments they have to make. And some of those commitments, for them to fulfill them without you being in the country, could lead to all sorts of legal requirements for them that they will probably just prefer not to go through. So hopefully it's not too long an answer to your question, but I also wanted to just use it to touch on other things that people might find beneficial. So I hope that helps answer your question a little at least.
Yeah, no, thanks very much, Martin. So I think we almost at the point where we need to call it a day for today. If you, I see some questions in the chat that we haven't answered, but we're very, very mindful of time just because of other commitments. I think 7 p.m. will be a good place to end this one. But if you put any question in the chat that we haven't touched just because of time, and you still want to get an answer to that, so if you just use the link, I don't know if the link can be posted one more time. Just that, well, yeah, it's posted a couple of times, the contact link there. If you follow that, if you just click on that link and drop your question, we will try our best to follow up on those questions. But my apologies and our apologies for not answering all the questions just because of time. But we really appreciate you asking the question, Martin. I think you could. I think it might be a good place for if you just say some final notes, and then we can call it a day.
Yeah, no, just to say thanks again for everyone that's been able to join. We certainly hope you found it beneficial. We hope we're able to cover some of the things you had in mind at the time you joined. Again, we initially posted links to some of our platforms. There's a contact form there, which you'll be able to see more of our posts on our website. We're on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So yeah, we write a lot, or just try as much as possible to cover topics around some of these things. So please just, engage with us on those platforms. If you have questions on things that you would want to know about that we've never touched on, we're open to doing a bit of research as well to cover those topics and then put something out, not just for you, but hopefully it becomes available to many others. So yeah, no, thanks very much for joining, and hopefully this is not the last time we've seen many of you. And for those that are looking for jobs, obviously we wish you the best. Feel free to reach out to us with something you think we can help with, even if it's information. We can't always guarantee we will be able to help, but we'll definitely give you a shot if we can.
Yeah, no, thanks very much, Martin. And yeah, Martin has said everything. So thanks everyone for joining. We really appreciate it, and see you hopefully next time.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
Bye, guys.